Success Ritual Stacking, Layer Habits for Lasting Change. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Some changes arrive with fanfare, a grand resolution, a dramatic leap, a complete overhaul. But most lasting transformations slip in quietly, disguised as small choices repeated day after day. They don't crash through the door, they turn the handle, step in, and make themselves at home. The truth is, success is rarely the result of one defining moment. It's built in layers, each habit stacking neatly onto the last until the structure is so strong it becomes part of you. As Aristotle observed, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. These words are more than philosophy, they're a blueprint. If you want excellence in any area of life, you build it, not in a single act, but in countless small ones linked together over time. Ritual stacking is the art and science of this process. It's not about trying to fit one more thing into an already crowded day. It's about linking a new action to something you already do without fail, allowing the momentum of one to carry the other. Like train cars coupled together, the connection keeps them moving as one. This book will show you how to design, build, and sustain these stacks so they become unshakable. You'll see how a few intentional changes, anchored to habits you already own, can ripple through your days, shaping your health, work, relationships, and personal growth. By the final page, you won't just have new habits. You'll have a system that turns them into a lifestyle, a track you lay once and ride for years. The journey doesn't demand perfection. It asks only for small, consistent steps and the wisdom to link them together. That's where change stops being temporary and starts becoming who you are. Chapter 1: The Train Track Principle. On the edge of a quiet prairie town, two trains sat ready to depart. The first faced a clear stretch of track that disappeared into the horizon. The second faced a short set of rails that ended abruptly after a few hundred yards. Both engines had the same power, the same crew, and the same ambition. One would glide steadily toward its destination without hesitation. The other would sputter to a stop, its journey cut short by the limits of its track. Your daily life is not much different. The rails you've laid, your habits, determine how far and how smoothly you can travel toward your goals. A single good habit can move you forward, but without others linked to it, the progress eventually halts. Success isn't powered by occasional bursts of effort. It's carried by the smooth, unbroken continuity of small actions connected together. This is the essence of the train track principle. Individual actions gain force and direction when they are joined in sequence, just like rail segments form a path that carries a train. Think for a moment about one habit you already have without fail. Maybe it's brushing your teeth before bed, making coffee each morning, or checking your phone as soon as you wake. These actions don't require decision-making or debate. They happen automatically because they are anchored in your routine. On their own, these rails may not take you to your desired destination. But when you attach another action to them, like reading a page after brushing your teeth or meditating while your coffee brews, you extend the track. Each linked habit becomes both a destination and a launch point for the next. This works because your brain prefers patterns. In behavioral science, there's a concept called sequential cueing, which shows that actions performed in a set order become easier to recall and execute over time. Just as the wheels of a train follow the path laid before them without deviation, your mind follows the path of habits you've connected. Once in motion, one habit triggers the next with minimal mental effort. The process eliminates the need for willpower in the moment because the decision has already been made by the sequence. Imagine a morning where each habit flows into the next. You wake up and make your bed. That small victory leads directly to drinking a glass of water. Hydration cues you to open your planner and check the day's priorities. The act of planning naturally leads to starting your most important task. In this way, the day becomes a chain reaction, each link strong enough to pull the next along without strain. One smooth rail after another, the track carries you where you want to go. Contrast that with a morning of disconnected habits. You wake up and check your phone, scroll aimlessly, and lose 30 minutes without direction. You get coffee but forget breakfast. You opened your computer but are unsure what to start. With no rails joined together, you stall. Each new action requires fresh mental energy to choose, and the friction adds up until you run out of steam. The train track principle is powerful because it turns momentum into a renewable resource. The first step feels like effort, but the second, third, and fourth happen almost automatically. Over time, the sequence gains such strength that breaking it feels unnatural. Just as a train resists leaving its rails, you will resist abandoning your established track. You already have the materials, habits you do every day without thinking. The task ahead is not to build new rails from scratch but to connect the ones you already have into a path that leads where you want to go. The journey is longer, smoother, and more predictable when each segment fits seamlessly with the next. Lay the rails well, and the rest is just riding the track. Habits are the rails that guide your life's direction. Linking habits removes friction and increases momentum. Sequences reduce decision fatigue and make success sustainable. What is one daily habit you could use as the starting rail for a new sequence? Identify one unshakable habit you already have and think of one small action you could attach to it starting tomorrow. Chapter 2: The Science of Habit Stacking. In the moments before a championship race, an elite swimmer walks to the starting block with a familiar rhythm. She rolls her shoulders 3 times, adjusts her goggles, and takes 2 deep breaths. These steps are not random quirks. They are part of a ritual her mind and body have rehearsed so often that performing them automatically prepares her to compete. This sequence works because the human brain loves patterns. It's wired to link one action to the next, creating a chain that becomes stronger with every repetition. Habit stacking draws its power from this neurological wiring. At its core is the principle that your brain is a master of association. When one action consistently follows another, the mind begins to bind them together so tightly that starting the first almost guarantees the second will follow. Psychologists call this sequential cueing, a process in which the completion of one behavior serves as the trigger for the next. Over time, the trigger becomes so embedded that the second action feels incomplete if the first isn't performed. This linking process is closely tied to what researchers call the habit loop, a cycle of cue, routine, and reward. When you pair a new habit with an existing one, the old habit serves as the cue, launching the loop without requiring additional willpower. For example, if you decide to meditate after pouring your morning coffee, the smell and act of brewing coffee become your automatic prompt. Your brain no longer needs to schedule meditation, it simply flows from the existing loop. The strength of this approach lies in its efficiency. Decision-making is one of the most mentally draining activities you perform each day. Studies on decision fatigue show that the more choices you face, the more your self-control erodes over time. By embedding a new behavior into a sequence you already perform, you bypass the choice entirely. The chain does the remembering for you. In the same way a domino topples the next without hesitation, one habit in a stack initiates the next, conserving mental energy for more complex tasks. Neuroscience offers another compelling reason why stacking works: context-dependent memory. Your brain associates certain actions with specific environments, times, or preceding events. This is why hearing a particular song can suddenly flood your mind with memories from years ago. By strategically pairing habits, you use this mechanism to your advantage. Brushing your teeth before bed in the same place every night creates a mental bridge to whatever action follows. When the first step happens, the brain's contextual memory calls up the next step like a well-rehearsed script. Think of your habits as beads on a string. Each bead is useful alone, but their real beauty emerges when they are connected. A single bead can be misplaced or forgotten. A string of beads is harder to lose. The same principle applies to your behaviors. One habit may fail under pressure, but a connected chain resists breaking because each link reinforces the others. This is why athletes, musicians, and high-performing professionals rely on tightly structured rituals. They understand that preparation doesn't begin with the main task, it begins with the sequence that leads into it. Each preceding action primes the body and mind, removing uncertainty and building momentum. The swimmer on the starting block isn't just warming up muscles, she's activating a mental pathway that ends in peak performance. When you approach your day with this awareness, you stop seeing habits as isolated tasks. They become part of a living sequence, each step setting up the next. Whether you want to improve health, productivity, or creativity, the science of habit stacking gives you a way to weave your desired actions into the fabric of your existing life. You don't have to fight your brain's love of patterns, you can harness it, one link at a time. The brain naturally links actions through sequential cueing. Pairing new habits with existing ones embeds them in the habit loop. Context-dependent memory makes sequences automatic and harder to break. Which current habit could serve as a reliable trigger for something new you want to add to your routine? Choose one existing habit and deliberately perform a small new action immediately after it for the next 7 days. Chapter 3: Anchor Habits, Your Foundation Stones. In a bustling kitchen, long before the first order arrives, a chef sharpens their knife. The motion is precise, practiced, and never skipped. It doesn't matter if the day is busy or slow, or whether the chef feels tired or energetic, this ritual happens. It's more than preparation, it's an anchor. Everything that follows in the day's cooking depends on this simple, unwavering action. Without it, the rest of the work feels off balance. Anchor habits are the foundation stones of your daily life. They are the actions so ingrained that you rarely think about them, yet they occur without fail. These might be as simple as brushing your teeth, making your bed, brewing coffee, or locking the door when you leave home. The key is their reliability. Because they happen without conscious effort, they form the perfect base for stacking new habits on top. Just as a skyscraper requires a stable foundation before its upper levels can rise, your habit stack requires anchors that will hold steady regardless of the day's changes. To identify your own anchors, start by observing your routines as they naturally occur. Look for the actions that have been with you for years, those you would have to actively resist to skip. These are not the habits you're trying to improve or build, they are the ones that already exist without negotiation. Maybe you always check your email when you sit at your desk. Perhaps you walk to the kitchen for water every morning at the same time. Even seemingly trivial actions qualify, as long as they happen consistently. What makes anchor habits so powerful is that they don't just provide stability, they also serve as natural cues. The brain thrives on cues because they remove uncertainty. If every time you finish brewing coffee you immediately write in your journal, the coffee becomes a trigger. The journal writing stops being a separate decision and starts being the next step in an automatic sequence. Without the anchor, the cue would not exist, and the habit you're trying to build would require more mental effort to initiate. Consider a commuter who listens to language lessons in the car every morning. The anchor is the act of starting the car. The moment the engine turns on, the lesson begins. Over time, the two become inseparable. The commuter doesn't have to remember to study. The action flows naturally from an anchor that is already part of daily life. This predictability not only reinforces the habit but also protects it from disruption. Even when the day feels unpredictable, the anchor stands firm. Metaphorically, anchors are like the bedrock beneath a city. Without bedrock, structures shift, crack, or collapse under stress. With bedrock, they endure storms and decades of wear. In your own life, anchors allow you to build habits that can survive travel, fatigue, and unexpected events. They become the unshakable points to which you attach new actions, ensuring your routines hold their shape over time. The process of building on anchors should start small. Choose one anchor and attach a single new habit to it. Keep this pairing consistent until it feels natural. Only then should you add another link to the chain. Too many additions too soon can weaken the foundation, just as building too many floors too quickly can compromise a structure. Stability is the priority, expansion comes after. Once you recognize and respect your anchors, you can begin to design habit stacks that last for years. These foundation stones require little maintenance yet support enormous growth. By carefully selecting and strengthening them, you prepare the ground for sequences that will carry you steadily toward your goals. Every strong habit chain begins with something so simple you might overlook it, but once you build on it, it becomes the pillar that holds the rest in place. Anchor habits are consistent, automatic actions that serve as foundations for new habits. They work as reliable cues, reducing mental effort and increasing habit stability. Starting with one strong anchor ensures your habit stacks have long-term resilience. Which daily habit in your life is so reliable that you could confidently attach something new to it starting tomorrow? Identify one anchor habit today and decide on a small, meaningful action to perform immediately after it for the next week. Chapter 4: The Micro-Action Advantage. In the mid-1990s, a young stockbroker developed a system to stay motivated in a grueling sales job. Each morning, he placed a jar with 120 paper clips on his desk. Every time he made a sales call, he moved one paperclip to an empty jar. His only goal was to transfer all the clips by day's end. The simplicity of the task was disarming, but it worked. Over time, his calls and his success multiplied. What made the method effective wasn't the size of each action, but the fact that it was small enough to repeat without hesitation. This is the micro-action advantage, the principle that small, consistent steps outperform grand but sporadic efforts. In habit stacking, micro-actions are the building blocks that make the structure possible. When you attach a new habit to an anchor, the smaller it is, the more likely it is to take root. The act should be so easy that skipping it would feel almost absurd. Drinking a glass of water after brushing your teeth, writing one sentence after opening your notebook, or stretching for 30 seconds after getting out of bed, these actions demand so little energy that they bypass your brain's natural resistance. The reason this works lies in how our brains respond to effort and reward. Large, ambitious changes often trigger the mind's threat detection system. Faced with a daunting task, the brain begins searching for escape routes, resulting in procrastination or avoidance. Micro-actions, by contrast, fly under the radar. They feel safe, achievable, and even trivial, which is precisely why they can be repeated long enough to become automatic. Once the repetition is established, the action size can grow naturally without sparking resistance. Think of a micro-action as a seed. On its own, it's small and unimpressive, but it contains the potential for something far greater. The seed doesn't demand to become a tree overnight. It needs soil, water, and time. In habit stacking, the anchor habit provides the soil, the repetition provides the water, and time does the rest. Given enough cycles, the micro-action grows into a full-fledged habit that can support additional layers in your stack. Research on behavior change supports this approach. Studies have shown that starting with small, specific actions increases adherence rates dramatically. In one experiment, participants who committed to flossing just one tooth each night were far more likely to build a full flossing habit than those told to floss all their teeth from the beginning. The absurdly easy starting point removed the psychological barrier, and the expanded behavior followed naturally. Another advantage of micro-actions is the momentum they create. Completing a small task provides a quick win, triggering a dopamine release that reinforces the behavior. That win, however small, primes you for the next action in your stack. Over time, these moments of success accumulate, creating a rhythm of progress that feels satisfying and self-sustaining. It's like pushing a child's swing. The first push is light, but it sets a motion in place that can be built upon with minimal effort. In practical terms, the micro-action advantage means resisting the temptation to start big. Ambition is valuable, but in the early stages of a habit stack, it can be counterproductive. If your goal is to run daily, begin by putting on your running shoes after finishing breakfast. If you want to read more, start by opening a book and reading a single sentence before bed. The simplicity makes it possible to succeed every time, which in turn keeps the chain intact. Once the habit is secure, you can let it expand to match your ambition. The path to lasting change isn't a sprint fueled by bursts of motivation, it's a steady walk powered by consistent steps. Micro-actions may seem modest, but they are the quiet architects of momentum, the sparks that keep the train moving down the track. When stacked thoughtfully, they become the glue that holds your rituals together, ensuring each link in the chain is light enough to lift but strong enough to last. Micro-actions bypass resistance by being too small to fail. They provide quick wins that build momentum for the rest of the habit stack. Small beginnings naturally grow into lasting, larger habits over time. What is the smallest possible version of a habit you want to start that you could attach to an existing anchor today? Choose one habit you've struggled to start, and reduce it to its smallest possible action, then attach it to a reliable anchor habit. Chapter 5: Momentum Mechanics. In a small coastal town, a boy learned to ride his first bicycle on a gently sloping street. His father gave him one strong push, and the bike glided forward almost effortlessly. For the first few seconds, he barely had to pedal. The energy from that single push carried him forward. By the time the slope flattened, he had found his balance, and pedaling no longer felt like work. The hardest part, getting started, was already behind him. Momentum in habit stacking works in much the same way. The most effort is required to begin. Once you start, each completed action generates energy for the next, creating a chain reaction that carries you forward. In physics, momentum is the quantity of motion an object has, determined by its mass and speed. In life, your mass is the habits you've built, and your speed is the consistency with which you perform them. The more you connect small, reliable actions, the more momentum you generate, making it easier to sustain progress with less conscious effort. This principle is why a single well-placed habit can transform entire sections of your day. When one action flows directly into another, you reduce the mental friction of deciding what to do next. The decision is made by the sequence itself. A morning routine that starts with making your bed may lead naturally into drinking water, which leads into reviewing your priorities, which leads into focused work. Each completed step gives you the psychological boost to tackle the next, just as each pedal stroke on the bicycle feels lighter once the bike is already moving. Psychologists refer to this as the success spiral. Completing one action triggers a positive emotional state, often fueled by a release of dopamine. That good feeling encourages the next action, and the pattern continues. The effect compounds when habits are stacked because there is no gap where hesitation or distraction can slip in. Like train cars connected on the same track, each habit pulls the next along behind it. The energy from one car doesn't stop when it reaches the coupling, it transfers to the next and the next, building a rhythm of forward motion. The Zeigarnik effect also plays a role in sustaining momentum. This psychological phenomenon suggests that our minds are more likely to remember and return to incomplete tasks. When you begin your habit stack, the brain registers the sequence as in progress until the final action is completed. This creates a subtle pull to finish what you've started, making it less likely you'll abandon the process midway. Beginning the first step is like tipping the first domino. Once it's in motion, the rest feels inevitable. Momentum mechanics also help overcome the inertia of low-energy days. On mornings when motivation is scarce, the commitment to start with just the first habit can be enough to pull you into the entire sequence. Because each action is linked, doing one makes skipping the rest feel unnatural. This is why well-designed stacks can be so resilient. They don't rely on bursts of enthusiasm, only on the ability to take the next step in a sequence that's already moving. However, momentum is not self-sustaining without attention. Just as a bicycle will eventually slow without pedaling, habit stacks require occasional reinforcement. This can be as simple as revisiting your anchor habits to ensure they remain strong or refining a step that has become cumbersome. The goal is to keep the path smooth so the momentum flows naturally from one habit to the next without unnecessary resistance. When you understand momentum mechanics, you see why starting small matters, but you also see the value of consistency. The first push is always the hardest, but once you're moving, each step becomes easier, each action lighter. The key is to keep the sequence unbroken long enough for the motion to carry you forward, turning effort into rhythm and rhythm into results. Momentum, once built, is one of the most reliable engines of lasting change. Momentum reduces the effort needed to sustain a habit sequence. Each completed action fuels the next through psychological and neurological triggers. The key to lasting momentum is starting and keeping the sequence unbroken. Which habit in your life consistently gives you the most energy or motivation to complete the next task? Identify one existing habit that reliably boosts your energy and place it at the start of a small, consistent stack. Chapter 6: Designing Your First Stack. An architect never starts building without a blueprint. Before a single brick is laid or a beam is lifted, the structure exists on paper, with every line and measurement carefully planned. This preparation ensures that when construction begins, each piece fits seamlessly into place. Habit stacking benefits from the same principle. Designing your first stack with intention ensures the sequence will be both functional and sustainable, able to withstand the demands of daily life. The starting point is choosing the right anchor habit. This should be something you do without fail, regardless of mood or schedule changes. The more stable the anchor, the stronger the stack. Look for actions tied to existing daily cues: waking up, making coffee, arriving at your desk, or brushing your teeth. These are fixed points in your routine, much like the foundation of a building that remains in place even as other elements shift. Once you've identified your anchor, select a new habit to attach that is both meaningful and small enough to execute effortlessly. This is where the micro-action advantage comes into play. If your anchor is pouring morning coffee, your new habit could be writing down one thing you're grateful for before taking the first sip. The action is short, specific, and directly linked to the anchor, making it difficult to forget and easy to repeat. Placement matters. The new habit should occur immediately after the anchor, without a gap that allows distractions to intrude. Gaps break the chain, forcing you to rely on willpower to reconnect it. Think of your stack as a row of dominoes. Each must be positioned close enough that the fall of one directly tips the next. Even a small space between them can stop the motion entirely. With the anchor and first habit in place, test the sequence in real life. Perform it daily for at least a week, observing how naturally the actions flow together. Pay attention to any points where resistance appears. Is the new habit too big for the time available? Does it require tools or preparation that aren't easily accessible? If so, simplify it or adjust the environment to remove friction. Just as an architect may revise a plan mid-construction to account for real-world conditions, you can refine your stack to fit your lifestyle. Tracking your progress during this early stage helps solidify the connection between habits. A simple checkmark on a calendar or note in a habit tracking app provides visual reinforcement, turning your consistency into a visible chain. This serves as both a reward and a motivator. Breaking the streak becomes something you naturally want to avoid. The feedback loop keeps your focus sharp until the stack becomes automatic. It's tempting to add more habits immediately once the first pairing feels comfortable, but patience is key. Expanding too quickly can overload the sequence and cause it to collapse under its own weight. Give each new habit enough time to integrate fully before introducing another. A well-constructed stack grows gradually, like a building rising floor by floor, each level supported by the strength of the one below it. The goal of designing your first stack is not perfection but sustainability. A small, simple stack performed consistently will outperform an ambitious one abandoned after a few days. Once the design is proven in your daily routine, you'll have the confidence and skill to build additional stacks in other areas of your life, eventually linking them into a network of rituals that guide your actions from morning to night. The first stack is your blueprint, the model on which all future sequences will be built. Approach it with the same care an architect gives their plans, and you'll create a structure that can stand for years. A strong anchor habit is the foundation of an effective stack. Immediate placement after the anchor keeps the chain unbroken. Testing and refining your sequence ensures long-term sustainability. What reliable daily habit could serve as the foundation for your first stack? And what is the smallest meaningful action you could attach to it? Choose one anchor habit, and design a single-step stack to perform immediately after it every day for the next week. Chapter 7: Breaking Through the Forgetting Curve. A concert pianist begins each practice session by playing the same warm-up scales. These scales are not complex, nor do they directly prepare her for every piece she will perform. But without them, the rest of her practice feels unsteady. The repetition ingrains the motions into her muscle memory, ensuring that even after days away from the piano, her hands remember where to go. This is how she pushes back against the brain's natural tendency to forget. The forgetting curve, first described by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, shows that memory fades rapidly after learning unless the information or action is reinforced. Within days, much of what was once fresh becomes faint, and without repetition, it eventually disappears altogether. Habits, though more rooted in behavior than information, are not immune to this decay. A habit left unused can fade, its cues losing their strength until the action no longer feels automatic. Breaking through this curve requires deliberate reinforcement. The most reliable method is consistent repetition, ideally at the same time and in the same context each day. This is where habit stacking offers a distinct advantage. By attaching a habit to an anchor you already perform consistently, you create a built-in reminder that keeps the habit alive. The anchor acts as a safeguard, ensuring that even when life becomes unpredictable, the cue to act remains intact. Emotional connection also strengthens memory and habit retention. When an action is linked to a feeling, whether satisfaction, pride, or relief, the brain stores it more vividly. A habit that delivers an emotional payoff is more likely to withstand the forgetting curve because it is encoded not just as a sequence of motions, but as an experience. For example, ending a journaling habit with a note of gratitude adds an emotional dimension that deepens its imprint on the mind. Rewards play a similar role in reinforcing habits. These do not need to be extravagant. The satisfaction of checking off a completed habit or the small lift from acknowledging progress can be enough to signal the brain that the behavior is worth repeating. Over time, the habit itself can become its own reward, but in the early stages, intentional reinforcement helps it take root. Spacing also matters. Just as spaced repetition strengthens memory when learning new material, performing a habit at regular, predictable intervals solidifies its place in your routine. Irregular practice allows too much time for the connection between cue and action to weaken, making it easier for the habit to slip into neglect. This is why daily engagement, even in minimal form, is more effective for habit survival than sporadic but intense bursts. Environmental cues further support the fight against forgetting. Placing visual reminders in the locations where you perform your habits reduces the risk of overlooking them. If your habit is to drink water after lunch, keeping a glass visible on your desk serves as a physical prompt. These cues work in harmony with your anchor habits, reinforcing the chain from multiple angles. Resilience is also part of breaking the forgetting curve. Missing a single day is rarely fatal to a habit, but ignoring it for several days in a row increases the likelihood of erosion. The key is to recover quickly, re-establishing the sequence before the brain rewires away from it. A short lapse can be a momentary dip in the curve. A prolonged one can flatten it entirely. When you understand the mechanics of forgetting, you can design habits to withstand it. Repetition, emotional engagement, rewards, environmental support, and rapid recovery all keep the connection alive. Over time, the habit moves from fragile memory to embedded identity, immune to the rapid decay that claims so many well-intentioned changes. Like the pianist's scales, your rituals become second nature, surviving not because you remember to do them, but because forgetting is no longer an option. The forgetting curve shows how quickly habits fade without reinforcement. Anchors, emotional connection, and rewards strengthen habit retention. Consistent repetition and quick recovery from lapses protect habits long-term. Which habit in your current routine feels most at risk of fading if not deliberately reinforced? Identify one habit you want to protect from forgetting and pair it with a reliable anchor to ensure daily repetition. Chapter 8: Removing Friction, Adding Flow. On the night before a championship meet, an Olympic swimmer lays out her swimsuit, goggles, and towel in a neat row. Her breakfast is ready in the kitchen, her bag is packed, and her alarm is set. By morning, there is nothing to decide, no time lost searching for what she needs. The path from waking up to stepping onto the pool deck is as smooth as possible. She has removed every obstacle between herself and performance. Friction is the hidden enemy of habit stacking. It is the resistance that makes an action feel harder than it needs to be. Friction can be physical, like having to search for your running shoes, or mental, like having to decide when and how to complete a task. The more friction that stands between you and your habit, the less likely it is to happen, especially on low-energy days. Removing friction is about clearing these obstacles so the habit becomes the path of least resistance. One of the simplest ways to remove friction is through preparation. This might mean setting out the materials you need in advance, arranging your environment to favor the desired action, or placing cues where they are unavoidable. If you want to take vitamins after breakfast, keep them next to your coffee mug. If you want to read before bed, leave the book on your pillow in the morning. These changes transform the habit from something you must remember to something you practically stumble into. The opposite principle, adding friction, can be used to weaken habits you want to reduce. If you want to limit social media scrolling, sign out of your accounts after each use or delete the app from your home screen. Every extra step you insert between you and the undesired habit increases the effort required, making it less likely to occur automatically. By manipulating friction, you can both encourage the habits you want and discourage the ones you don't. Flow, on the other hand, is what happens when your habits connect so seamlessly that each one leads naturally to the next. A well-designed stack minimizes the space between actions, making it easier to keep going than to stop. Just as a river carves its smoothest path over time, your routine can be shaped to guide you effortlessly from one step to the next. This requires attention to both sequence and environment. If your habit stack involves exercise after work, placing your workout clothes where you'll see them the moment you walk in the door can turn intention into action without delay. Research on choice architecture shows that the way options are presented can significantly influence behavior. By making your desired habits more visible, accessible, and convenient than alternatives, you increase the likelihood of following through. Your environment should act as a silent partner in your habit stacking, supporting your choices without requiring constant conscious effort. The goal is to make your habits so easy to start that not doing them feels unnatural. Imagine a morning routine where you step out of bed onto a yoga mat, drink water from a bottle set beside it, and move directly into a short, stretching sequence before heading to the kitchen where breakfast is already prepared. Each step is supported by the one before it, with no space for hesitation. The more you refine the flow, the more the sequence runs on autopilot. Removing friction and adding flow is about engineering your surroundings and routines so that the easiest choice is the right one. When every step in your habit stack is prepared, accessible, and naturally linked to the next, you eliminate much of the struggle that derails good intentions. Over time, this design becomes invisible. You no longer notice the absence of obstacles, only the ease with which your day moves forward. That ease is the mark of a system built to last. Friction is any obstacle that makes a habit harder to perform. Removing friction and preparing in advance makes habits the path of least resistance. Designing flow ensures each habit naturally leads to the next with minimal effort. What is one source of friction in your daily routine that, if removed, would make it easier to complete a desired habit? Choose one habit you want to strengthen and remove a single obstacle that slows or complicates it before tomorrow. Chapter 9: The Compounding Effect. In the corner of a quiet library, an investor studies the history of wealth building. She traces the story of an early banker who started with a single coin and, through the power of compounding interest, amassed a fortune that seemed impossible from such a modest beginning. Each small deposit grew not only through its own value but also through the accumulated growth of every deposit before it. The gains built on themselves, producing results far beyond what could be achieved in isolation. Habits follow the same principle. The compounding effect in habit stacking is the gradual, exponential growth that happens when small, consistent actions accumulate over time. At first, the gains may seem negligible, almost invisible. One new habit, reading a page a day, doing a short walk, meditating for 2 minutes, produces little measurable change in the early weeks. But as each habit continues and more are stacked on top, the results begin to multiply. The actions reinforce one another, and the benefits ripple outward into other areas of life. This is why habit stacking is more powerful over months and years than it appears at the start. Just as compound interest accelerates when reinvested gains create more gains, habit stacks accelerate when the success of one habit fuels the success of others. Drinking water in the morning may improve focus, which makes it easier to complete your planning routine, which in turn makes you more consistent with exercise, which boosts your energy for the rest of the day. The cycle builds on itself, with each habit making the others more effective. The psychological impact is equally significant. Every time you complete your stack, you reinforce your identity as someone who follows through. This identity shift compounds as well, because the more you believe in your ability to keep commitments to yourself, the more likely you are to take on and sustain new habits. Over time, the stack stops being something you do and becomes part of who you are. That internal transformation is one of the most valuable outcomes of compounding habits. Research into long-term behavior change confirms that the benefits of consistent small actions are rarely linear. Instead, they follow a curve that starts slowly, then accelerates as the effects build. This can be both encouraging and challenging. It means that patience is essential. Just as an investor must wait to see meaningful returns, you must trust the process long enough for your habits to compound. The results may not be dramatic at first, but they are building beneath the surface. One of the most powerful ways to enhance the compounding effect is to deliberately link habits that have reinforcing benefits. Pairing healthy eating habits with regular exercise, for example, produces more noticeable improvements than practicing either in isolation. When designing new stacks, consider how each action can amplify the next. Over time, you'll find that the total impact of the stack far exceeds the sum of its parts. It's also important to protect the stack from erosion. Missing a habit once has little effect, but repeatedly skipping weakens the chain and slows the compounding process. Think of it like withdrawing from your investment too often, the gains are interrupted, and you lose the momentum needed for growth. The aim is not perfection but consistency over the long term, maintaining enough continuity for the compounding to take hold. The true magic of the compounding effect is that it shifts the focus from individual outcomes to the ongoing process. You no longer rely on bursts of effort to achieve change. Instead, you trust in the quiet accumulation of small wins. Day by day, your actions lay the tracks for a life that moves steadily toward your goals. At first, progress feels slow. Then it feels inevitable. And finally, it feels unstoppable. The compounding effect multiplies the benefits of small, consistent habits over time. Linked habits can reinforce and amplify one another's impact. Long-term consistency is essential for compounding to work. Which habit in your current routine could serve as the foundation for long-term compounding if maintained consistently? Identify one habit with clear reinforcing benefits, and commit to maintaining it daily for the next 30 days to begin the compounding process. Chapter 10: Stacking for Multiple Life Areas. In a symphony hall before the audience arrives, the orchestra warms up. Each section plays its own notes, the strings tuning, the brass testing their breath, the percussion tapping quietly. Individually, these sounds are scattered and incomplete. But when the conductor lifts the baton, the sections align, each contributing its part to a unified whole. The music becomes something far greater than the sum of its parts. Your life functions in much the same way. You have distinct areas: health, productivity, relationships, personal growth, that often operate independently. When you stack habits within each area and then connect those stacks into a broader routine, you create harmony across your life. Instead of isolated improvements, you produce a balanced, reinforcing system where progress in one area supports progress in others. Health is often the most tangible starting point. Simple stacks like drinking water after waking, stretching after brushing your teeth, or taking a short walk after lunch can form a health-focused chain that boosts energy and resilience. These habits not only improve physical well-being but also feed into productivity by increasing focus and reducing fatigue. The benefits flow outward, touching every other area of your day. Productivity stacks work in a similar way but focus on mental clarity and efficiency. Anchoring the day with a sequence like reviewing priorities after your morning beverage, tackling the most important task immediately after, and doing a brief check-in before lunch can create a flow of work that minimizes distraction. Over time, this consistent structure reduces decision fatigue and frees mental bandwidth for creative or strategic thinking. Relationships can also benefit from intentional stacking. Small actions like sending a message of appreciation after your morning meeting or asking one meaningful question during dinner can be linked to existing routines. These moments of connection, though brief, accumulate into stronger bonds over time. Just as neglect can quietly weaken a relationship, consistent positive interactions can strengthen it in ways that feel natural rather than forced. Personal growth is another area where stacking shines. Reading a page of a book before bed, journaling after brushing your teeth, or listening to an educational podcast during your commute can all be tied to daily anchors. The goal here is not rapid transformation but steady enrichment, the slow accumulation of knowledge and reflection that shapes your perspective over months and years. The power of stacking across multiple life areas lies in the interconnectedness of the results. A health stack can fuel productivity by increasing energy. Productivity stacks can free time for relationships. Relationship stacks can improve emotional well-being, making it easier to sustain health and growth habits. When each area supports the others, you create a self-reinforcing cycle similar to the compounding effect, but on a broader, life-wide scale. It's important, however, to introduce stacks gradually. Attempting to build complex routines in every area at once can lead to overwhelm and inconsistency. Start with 1 or 2 areas, solidify those stacks, and then expand. Like adding instruments to a piece of music, you bring in new elements when the existing arrangement is steady, ensuring the harmony holds. Over time, you can develop a daily rhythm where each life area receives attention without feeling forced. Mornings might focus on health and productivity, afternoons on relationships and growth, evenings on reflection and rest. The balance won't always be perfect, but the structure makes it easier to return to equilibrium when life pulls you off track. Stacking for multiple life areas turns habit building from a narrow exercise into a comprehensive strategy for living well. By linking actions within each domain and then weaving those domains together, you create a system where your daily behaviors align with your broader values. The result is not just productivity, health, or happiness in isolation, but a well-orchestrated life that plays in tune with your goals. Stacking habits in different life areas creates a balanced, reinforcing system. Improvements in one area can support progress in others through interconnected benefits. Gradual introduction of stacks ensures sustainability and harmony. Which 2 areas of your life could most benefit from the structure and reinforcement of habit stacking right now? Choose one habit for each of those 2 areas and anchor them to existing routines to begin building interconnected stacks. Chapter 11: The Resilience Factor. High in the mountains, a climber ascends a sheer face, her rope taut between anchors drilled into the rock. Midway up, a sudden slip sends her swinging. The rope jerks, halting her fall. She steadies herself, regains her footing, and continues upward. The slip didn't end her climb. It was a momentary disruption, one she was prepared to recover from. Her progress depended not on avoiding every mistake, but on her ability to recover quickly when they happened. The same principle applies to habit stacking. No matter how strong your routines, life will eventually interrupt them. Illness, travel, emergencies, or unexpected changes in schedule can break your sequence. The resilience factor is your ability to return to your stack quickly, repairing the chain before the gap widens. It is the difference between a temporary lapse and a complete collapse of your habits. Resilience begins with mindset. Missing a habit once is not a failure, it is an expected part of the process. The danger lies in letting one misday become several, at which point the connection between habits weakens and the cues lose their power. Psychologists call this the "what the hell" effect, where a single slip triggers a sense of defeat, leading to further lapses. By reframing a break as a pause rather than a failure, you remove the guilt that often fuels this downward spiral. The fastest way to rebuild momentum after a disruption is to return to the simplest form of your stack. If travel prevents you from completing your full morning routine, return with just the anchor habit and one micro-action. This scaled-down version reestablishes the connection without overwhelming you. Once the anchor feels automatic again, rebuild the remaining steps. This approach mirrors physical rehabilitation, starting small to regain strength before returning to full capacity. Another key to resilience is redundancy. By having multiple anchors for the same habit, you give yourself alternate routes back into the sequence. If you usually meditate after making coffee but travel prevents that, you might instead link meditation to brushing your teeth. The habit survives by attaching to a different, still reliable cue. Flexibility keeps the habit alive when your usual context changes. Environmental reminders also play a role. Visual cues, such as sticky notes, habit trackers, or objects placed in key locations, can help you restart more quickly. These prompts act like trail markers after a storm, visible signs that guide you back to the path. They are especially useful when disruptions scatter your attention and make it harder to recall your sequence naturally. Resilience also benefits from reflection. After a break, consider what caused the lapse and whether adjustments can make the habit more resistant to future disruptions. If you missed workouts during a busy week, perhaps your stack could shift exercise to a time of day less vulnerable to interruptions. This process is less about preventing every break and more about making each recovery faster and easier. Ultimately, the resilience factor turns habit stacking into a long-term strategy rather than a temporary experiment. The goal is not unbroken perfection but consistent recovery. A chain that can be repaired quickly remains strong over years, even if it occasionally loses a link. Like the climber who trusts her rope, you can trust that your system will catch you when life forces a slip, allowing you to regain your footing and keep moving upward. Resilience is the ability to return to your habit stack quickly after a disruption. Scaling back to the simplest version of your stack helps re-establish momentum. Flexibility, visual cues, and reflection make habits more resistant to future breaks. When one of your habits is interrupted, what is the smallest action you can take to re-establish the chain immediately? Identify one habit prone to disruption and create a backup anchor you can use to restart it in a different context. Take care and be well.